मिसेस मैथ्यू, हम दोबारा अपनी चर्चा को जारी रखते हैं और आप जो है इंडिविजुअल एम्प्लीफिकेशन की बात कर रही थी और उसमें जो एक ये चर्चा हमारी चल रही थी कि सरकार की तरफ से जो हियरिंग एड है इसके लिए सरकार की क्या योजना है, वो किस प्रकार से इन बच्चों को देती है और इनका किस तरह से असेसमेंट किया जाता है, और क्या इनका कोई पीरियोडिक असेसमेंट होता है क्या ये देखने के लिए कि इनकी जो हियरिंग एबिलिटीज़ जो है ये कम हुई है, ज़्यादा हुई है? तो इस बारे में कुछ बताएं आप हमारे दर्शकों को।
Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, this program has provision for providing amplification devices to the children with hearing impairment. But of course, if you see, there are other schemes like SADP scheme, SADP schemes and all, where based on the parents' income group, they will be given the amplification devices. So the amplification provision of hearing aids is there for SSA, and there are several other schemes also. And there are several agencies who donate or maybe sponsor the hearing aids also for these disadvantaged children, or we say the disabled learners. But the and normally in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, I mean, if I'm right, in Maharashtra we use a camp approach where they conduct a camp where they call the audiologists, they call the team of doctors, educators and audiologists, they all be together and they assess the hearing loss. And many a times in such places where this camp facility cannot be made available, they bring to the nearest center an institution where this facility of assessing the hearing loss and fitting of amplification devices are available. There they just bring their students or the group of children from their school and they get assessed themselves. But this is a real concern because we lack manpower for periodic assessment. But of course within as per rule also that the disability certificate is valid only for 5 years. So I can assure that most of the children's hearing loss will be periodic, assessed in an interval of 5 years. But every year, or if you say a continuous or a periodic assessment, we need to look at whether the facilities are available or not.
क्या इस तरह का जो असेसमेंट है वह स्कूल प्रीमाइसेस में, स्कूल के प्रांगण में क्या ये संभव है?
Sir, maybe we need to have an outreach service, or a solely a department. Like I can say that in Aliyawa National Institute we have a separate department like a outreach extension department where they reach to the villages, they reach to schools, they reach to the places where those services are not available, and there they offer the services. It can be possible, but the problem is that, sir, if you see in an inclusive school, there may not be like 50 or a 60 children and there, and many times, and audiometers and all, like because it is caliber and all, you cannot take these audiometers to portable audiometers are there, but ideal testing environment we may not require we may not get in an inclusive setup. So I think the professionals who are trained in that, they may agree with me that the situation, the ideal testing situation may not be prevalent, but of course for screening portable audiometers are used, and
they are available.
Yes, it's available. It is available at the resource center of each SSA's unit also.
आपने बहुत अच्छी जानकारी दी इसके बारे में। अब हमारा जो दोबारा से वापस हम आ जाते हैं कि इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन में एक जो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण जो एस्पेक्ट है वह है क्लासरूम स्ट्रैटेजीज का, क्योंकि कहीं पर भी एक शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में जो क्लासरूम जो है वह बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है, और उस क्लासरूम के जो दो इंपॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट्स है, एक है टीचर और एक है टॉट, और उनके बीच की जो रिलेशनशिप है, इट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट्स द क्लासरूम एनवायरनमेंट। तो इसमें एक इफेक्टिव टीचिंग के लिए किस तरह से क्लासरूम स्ट्रेटजीज होनी चाहिए इंक्लूसिव सेटअप के अंदर, उसके बारे में आप थोड़ा हमें विस्तार से बताइए।
a very important thing which we need to note here is that, sir, the teacher, you know, like the traditional school, the teacher is given a lot of emphasis, like we said that it is like teacher centered approaches or teacher centered methods, teacher centered strategies were followed, whereas here the role of the teacher is like a facilitator, more of child centered. The experience based learning takes place in inclusive setups. So for developing for an inclusive strategy for giving or delivery of instructions, again, sir, the removal of barriers are highly essential. When I say removal of barriers, it means the removal of curricular barriers and the instructional barriers which the child may encounter in the classroom setup. So let's have a look at the slide how we can remove the curricular and the instructional barriers. Very important thing a teacher in an inclusive setup should remember is that we should not restrict the activities within the four walls of the classroom, because we know that many a times we may not be able to provide adequate experience within the classroom situation. Hence, it is very essential for us to provide experience based learning or experience based teaching learning strategies. And of course, many a times what we have observed right now in our country is that we do not have an ideal inclusive school. Now, what is happening in our country is many of the regular schools, or I say the general education, they are converting or they are modifying to suit or to start an inclusive program. Okay. So, in such cases what happened, we are following the syllabus or the curriculum of the existing schools. So, we need to make these curriculums or I say inclusive, means it should suit to the needs of all the learners. So, hence we may need to adapt the curriculum wherever required. So, the teacher should remember that if the curriculum is creating a barrier for your child's learning, it is very essential to create a barrier free environment or barrier free curriculum by providing adaptations wherever required. I will be getting into details of adaptation in my later slides. And very important thing is, like I always say, it is a partnership approach. We want parents and we want teachers, we both have to join together and work. Hence, it is very essential for us to inform the parents what exactly is being taught in the class or what is to be done for teaching this particular lesson in your class. So, if you inform the parents well in advance about the lessons which you are going to teach, what the parents can help you out is they can teach or they can just give an experience based on the lesson which you are going to talk, or you can teach the new vocabulary which are going to be there. So, hence that is very essential, like when we always say in the lower levels we teach professionals. So, professionals means you have nurse, doctors, you have postman and you have a banker, you have a jewelry maker, or you say a teacher, or maybe a cleaner. So, all these things the teacher cannot provide or experience within the classroom. So, hence if you tell the parents, yes, I am going to teach these children about the different professionals in this thing. So, then of course, what the parents can do is they can give an exposure and with that experience the children benefit from what is being taught in the class. And wherever it is required, we should remember as teachers is like this is a general rule which is for every type of a teaching in the class, is like you slow down your pace of instructions. We have a tendency to speak very fast because we the teachers are burdened with I will not use the word burden, but we are the task is to complete the syllabus within the specific period of time. So, many a times we get a limited time to teach in the class. So, what we have a tendency to go fast, that may hamper the child's learning. So, we need to remember the instructions need to be very clear, appropriate and to the child's level. Second is we need to slow down the pace of instruction so that the children can benefit them, and restrict the movements while teaching, and we should speak very naturally, because it is observed that many teachers use exaggerated movements because they feel that exaggerated movement can enhance the speech reading abilities of children with hearing impairment. That is not true. So, hence you speak very naturally in the class but you slow down the pace of instructions and restrict your movements, because otherwise the child has to follow you to get speech read. And highlight the important points, you know, and give exposure to the clue words. For example, like I always say, like in mathematics, like when to do addition and when to do subtraction, you know that the children need to solve the word problems. The number problems are very easy for these children to solve it. Like if I say like a 3 plus 4, they know that plus symbol is there, so they know that we have to do addition, and they will tell you at 7. When I say that I have 3 mangoes and I got 5 more mangoes, and how many mangoes together I have, the children will get complicated at the lower level. Means when said together means what? Whether I should add, whether I should subtract, there is a confusion arise. So hence it is very essential for us to give clue words, so that like, you know, we will say addition, when to do addition, when I say sum, total, all together. So these clue words will help the children to do which type of a sum he has to do it. And subtraction also I say, like, you know, balance, remaining and all those things. Then use buddy system if required. I totally agree with the regular school or the teachers who work in inclusive classroom. They always complain that we have children, you know, the strength is 60. And many times it is a fact that we cannot give personalized attention to all these children also. So at such instances, you know, like some messages coming, some instructions you have given, maybe in the first attempt the child with a hearing impairment may find it difficult to comprehend it. In such instance, there are several tasks, several assignments you give it to your children where, you know, they find it very difficult to understand what exactly is the task given, how to solve it. In such instance, what you can do is you can have a buddy system. You can take a child or a peer from your class and ask him to support for his wherever he requires support. I think again I want to recall your memories to our first video, where I think in a higher class you have seen the children with the guides uniform. They were sitting in the class, where in that class there are 2 children. That girl was also hearing impaired and that boy was also having a hearing loss. But there also you have seen that girl, another partner who is sitting next to her is explaining. So they have a buddy system where these children will help. And when we were shooting that film also, what exactly was, there was an announcement from principal. So because of the noise and all, the children couldn't hear properly. So this buddy system is like these children are helping them to understand what exactly being said by the principal. Like so.
Sorry, if you permit me, I'll repeat these points which you have just covered in your slide. आपने अभी बताया कि क्लासरूम स्ट्रेटजीज के अंदर जो इम्पोर्टेंट जो चीज़ें हैं, जो महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु हैं जिनके ऊपर हमें ध्यान रखना है, वह ये है कि अनुभव पर आधारित शिक्षा होनी चाहिए. माने जो एजुकेशन है, इट शुड बी बेस्ड ऑन रियल लाइफ एक्सपीरियंसेस. क्योंकि जो किताबी ज्ञान है वह बच्चों के लिए शायद इतना इंटरेस्टिंग नहीं होता है जितना कि जो हमारे डेली लाइफ एक्सपीरियंस के ऊपर बेस्ड जो शिक्षा के अगर है तो वो ज़्यादा उसमें जो है दिलचस्पी बच्चों की बनी रहती है, उसमें उनका ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट होता है. दूसरा आपने बताया कि अध्यापक को इस बात का ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि वह जो भी पढ़ाए उसको वह धीरे धीरे धीमे धीमे गति से पढ़ाए. एकदम से जल्दी जल्दी पढ़ाने पर विशेष खास तौर पे जो विशेष बच्चे हैं उनको कुछ चीजें जो है हो सकता है कि उनको समझ में ना आए. और तीसरा आपने कहा कि जो मूवमेंट है वो रिस्ट्रिक्ट होनी चाहिए. नहीं, जो टीचर है अगर वो बहुत ज्यादा उसमें मूवमेंट होगी तो अगर मान लीजिए उसका बैक है बच्चों की तरफ, तो बच्चे खास तौर पे जो हियरिंग इम्पेयर्ड बधिर जो बच्चे हैं वह उसकी जो है टीचर क्या बोल रहा है, अध्यापक क्या बोल रहा है, बोल रही है, वो शायद उस चीज को समझ ना पाए. अगर उसका बैक अगर वो फेस कर रही है बच्चों से तो बहुत ज्यादा मूवमेंट नहीं होना चाहिए. और इसके अलावा आपने बताया कि जो इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट्स हैं उनको हाईलाइट करना बहुत जरूरी है, जिससे कि बच्चों को ये पता रहे कि ये पॉइंट जो है हमारे लिए सीखना, जानना, इसको याद करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. और फिर आपने कहा कि क्लू वर्ड्स या की वर्ड्स जो है उसका वह इस्तेमाल करे. क्लू वर्ड से मतलब यह है कि जिससे कि बच्चा जो है उसको क्लू मिल जाए और वह उसको सीख सके. और तीसरा आपने बडी सिस्टम कहा. बड़ी सिस्टम से मैं बहुत ज़्यादा परिचित नहीं हूँ, लेकिन क्या ये पीयर ट्यूटरिंग, इज इट लाइक पीयर ट्यूटरिंग?
It is, of course, the whole concept of inclusive education is one collaborative or a cooperative learning where
Right.
you group these children and then you
They learn from each other.
Learn from each
Especially
other. I will be dealing, sir, that
Okay.
in my later slides.
Okay.
How the group can be formed, which
Yes.
type of group
Yes.
can be
Yes.
formed. But assistance, of course, you take a support
हाँ,
of your दूसरे का help
हेलो
लेके करते हैं।
मैडम, एक फोन कॉल है, आप मैं जरा सुन के फिर आपको बताता हूँ।
हेलो।
बताइएगा कहाँ से है?
Good afternoon, sir.
गुड आफ्टरनून।
Myself
वेयर आर यू
Pankaj,
कॉलिंग
sir.
फ्रॉम?
Calling from Mumbai.
मुंबई। ओके,
I have one question from Sunny.
कैन यू प्लीज टेल मी योर नेम?
Hello.
योर नेम प्लीज? ओके, हाँ हाँ,
Hello.
यस, व्हाट इज योर
Yes,
क्वेश्चन?
sir. My question is that as we all of us know that we are focusing on inclusive education nowadays, and we are aware of the fact that when we are talking about children with special need, especially children with hearing impaired, then there are also some children with of severe category. So what are the strategies to cater the needs of these children in inclusive setup?
ओके मैडम,
And another question is that yes, what are the efforts being taken for sign language? As we know that sign language is very important, and ICT. What do you, what are you doing for this ICT and sign language?
Madam, there are two questions. The caller is from Bombay. The first question is about the strategies, classroom strategies for children with severe hearing impairment or severe category. And number two, the question is about sign language. What is being done for promoting sign language or use of sign language? The question was not very clear. And the role of ICT. By ICT, I understand information and communication technology.
Yes.
So, in fact, there are three questions. Number one, the strategies, classroom strategies of dealing with children with severe hearing impairment.
Right.
Number two, sign language, and third is information communication technology.
Right. So your first question to the strategies which the teacher used to follow in inclusive setup. In my next, after 2 slides, I will be talking to you in detail, like what are the strategies need to be included, and for severely impaired children, like we can modify those strategies and then we can take it. But ultimately, when I am going to discuss about all the strategies, what we should remember is that the success is like, success depends upon the background, what exactly is taught, or what is the background of the child, what base the child has. So based on that, we can modify our strategies of teaching, that I will be talking to you in depth in my next slides. And second part of it you were talking is about the sign language. If you see the concept of inclusive education implemented in Western countries, many a times you can see like what they say is the adaptation or the accommodations which they made for these children in a regular school setup is in terms of sign language. They provide interpreter services, or interpreters have been appointed in the classrooms where they will be converting into a sign language. See, we need to remember that in my discussion I said I really want to emphasize that I am not the only promoting the verbal language alone. Whichever the language is essential, we need to promote, whether it is verbal, whether it is manual, because you know that in a society when we live, and if we are stick on, or we have only one language competency, it is very difficult to live in a multilingual society. Since it is very essential for us to develop sign language strategies wherever, whoever or whichever the child needs, whether if the child can, if the child is early identified, if the child has a good listening skills, if the child has a good residual hearing, we can go ahead. There are several factors we can consider when we look for the verbal language. At the same time, in India, what is happening that many a times the people start with a verbal language or developing the verbal abilities in children, and maybe because of late identification, because of the lack of appropriate amplification devices, or because of the lack of continual use of amplification devices, or due to several reasons, many times the language is not adequately developed in these children. So these children with hearing impairment finds it difficult to express verbally. So in such instance, we should not take sign language as an option, or we say as an alternative to verbal language. We should not go, because if you look at the theoretical aspect of sign language.
Excuse me, ma'am, there is one more call. Yes. Please ask the question. Yes, question please. Okay, telephone got disconnected. Please, ma'am, carry on.
Yeah. So it is very essential to see sign language is also like a language like any other language. So we cannot teach sign language in a later years, or only late identified children require sign language. It's not like that. We even if you develop any language, develop within the critical years. But the problem with the Indian situation is, of course, we don't have a proper, because there are different states, different sign languages are followed. We don't have a common language itself, or maybe signed systems are used. All these things are happening. What happened? The development of a proper sign language in our country, or the documentary evidence, or the proper practice is very limited in the country. But NIHH has identified this as an issue, and NIHH has started or a sign language cell where they address the needs, and they have come up with several courses like for teaching sign language, that is level A, B, C, and also if I am right, the NIHH has got the initial approval of starting an interpreter servicer course. So if that is going to be there, of course the need of developing, or we can say we will get trained manpower who can train the children with hearing impairment in sign language. I will totally agree with you that I will not take this as not at all an option. Of course it is essential, it is the need of the hour. We need to provide different options, whether it in terms of education, whether it is in terms of mode of communication, but we need to see whether it is suiting to the particular child, which mode of communication you have selected, is it suitable. So whichever the most appropriate option, that we need to provide to the children with hearing impairment. So sign language promotion, of course within next 5 to 6 years you can see more interpreters coming and working in different educational setups developing sign language skills in children with hearing impairment. ICT, of course, ICT is the need of the hour, and of course in almost in all the way we have given a lot of emphasis for ICT, because computer assisted instructions have been a part of the curriculum. If you see the techniques like programmed learning and all, these techniques totally focus on developing the communication through computers and all. So it can be a program, or it can be a product where you can use ICT and then implement it for educational purpose. But again if I say that yes, ICT is the need of the hour, and if you tell me a village where they don't have even a computer,
yeah,
then it is going to be difficult. So we need to see is that how to utilize the existing resources maximally.
Very right.
And converting it to into children friendly or inclusive setup, how we can use it. That should be our three. If we are getting all these things, of course we can use.
Yes, ma'am, let us go back to your presentation. Yeah.
Right. So I think we have just little deviated from our presentation.
Yeah, and we are left with little time, so
yeah,
you will have to wind up. I think let's go back to your presentation.
So I said already, I have explained to you that we need to adapt the curriculum many a times, or maybe because the curriculum, maybe some of the curriculum which we are following may not be suitable for all children with hearing impairment or the diverse learners. Hence, adaptation is required, and I think many of my viewers are well versed with adaptation of textbook, because in your first year, second year diploma level curriculums, you know, we have studied about adaptation. So the adaptation of the textbook, it can be in terms of the language.
There's a call, ma'am.
Inclusive education includes children with special needs and which also includes gifted children. Sir, I know. My question is, what are the provisions for gifted children as support services or resource services? If we have such a service.
Ma'am, question is that inclusive education is meant for all kinds of children, including children with special needs and deprived children, etc., etc.
Right.
The question is, what are the provisions for gifted children? I think this is beyond the scope of your presentation, but if you have some information about the provisions or some classroom strategies for gifted children, you may like to share with us.
See, the governmental provisions in terms of any concessions or any in terms of promoting, I don't carry much this thing, because it is out of my area. But I feel that as a teacher, if gifted children are going to be in my class, of course my instructions will be totally different, and one strategy which the teachers can use, you know, to cater to the needs of gifted as well as the slow learners, is grouping for instructions. What we can do is basically is that we all should understand one fact, is that the learner in your class, all the learners are different. You forget about the children with special needs, leave aside, consider the group of children with able-bodied. So for those children also, you know that some are gifted, some are average, some are slow learners. Hence, even in general system also, it is very essential to have a differential, like a 3-tier or a 2-tier instructional program, where we should benefit all the students. Many times what we as teachers do is, like, we consider the average learner and then we pace the instructions based on that. So hence, for gifted children, what we can do is, we should tap their intellectual abilities and we should challenge, we should develop their giftedness, whether in terms of abilities, in the terms of their potentialities, in terms of their strengths.
Ma'am, there is one more call. Yes, please. Please ask the question.
Hello.
Yes, please
Hello?
ask the question. Yes, please ask the question.
Yes, sir. Sir, vocational training has been one of the important parts of education of children with hearing impairment in special education, which makes them independent. However, in inclusive education, we never talk about their vocational training. So, is there any provision in inclusive education for children with hearing impairment for their vocational training? This is my first question. Hello?
Yes, yes. Please carry on.
Hello?
Please
And
carry
the
on.
second question, in rural areas where there is lack of infrastructure facilities, so minimum facilities by which we can practice inclusive education success.
There are two questions, ma'am. I think this was from Ahmedabad, if I am correct. Number one is about vocational training. In special school, there is a provision for vocational training for children with hearing impairment. The question is there any provision for vocational training within inclusive education setting for children with hearing impairment? Number one. And the second question is that in rural areas there are lack of facilities. So can inclusive education become successful in rural areas? हिंदी के जो श्रोता हैं उनके लिए, हिंदी भाषी जो श्रोता हैं उनके लिए मैं बता दूं कि प्रश्न है, पहला प्रश्न ये है कि क्या व्यावसायिक शिक्षा का प्रावधान इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन में है या नहीं, और दूसरा कि रूरल एरिया में क्या इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन सफल हो सकता है या नहीं? जी मैम.
See, if you look at the policies and all in 1986, if you see the National Policy of Education, so very clearly or specifically mentioned that occasionalization of education. When I say earlier, before that, what do is we take occasional training separate, education separate. So with this policy coming into effect and its amendments and all, they said occasionalization of education is the part we should not give, because our education should enable the child to develop a skill which is essential to live for him in the society. So in such instance, what we can do is, I think our educational programs are moving towards occasionalization of education, but it may not be, you know, visible initially at the maybe in a very early educational stage, where exactly at the primary and secondary stage, where you know that the children's taste and the skills are changing. You know that a small child, you know, if you ask him, like he will say like I want to become a driver. As the child grows and, you know, appear for a 10th standard, his skills are something else. So what we can do is occasionalization of education is a part of the education. That is why we have several systems. If you see in your +2 after SSC, you have a various streams. Based on your skills, based on your talents, you can select your courses. But for children with hearing impairment, what exactly is happening from special education setup? If you see what happened, the schools, most of the schools are up the primary level. So there is no scope for us to provide a proper occasional training. But what do is readiness skills are being provided. Means when I say occasional readiness means, you know, we do basic skills of like, you know, drawing, your stitching, or maybe your electrical work, or, you know, these type of skills, not in a totally in a specialized way, but the basic things have been taught in the children, so that even cookery, because it is now all these things are of great demand in recent days. So preparation or like readiness skills have been taught in the class, but we don't have, I don't know, there are institutions who solely provide occasional training or occasional training to the children with hearing impairment. But it is very essential for us, if these children are going to be sustained in the inclusive system, I think and I hope that SSA will turn back and they will review the level of the children, and they will identify the needs, and if they need to be provided, I am sure that the government will come out with a program more or, you know, friendly to all these children, including children with hearing impairment. Another way what we can do is, maybe we can have some collaborative practices where an ITI center is there near to your school, and you collaborate it, and then through them you can train your children. These are the existing possibilities we can explore, but otherwise if you have a separate or inclusive education provisions are not there, we don't have any provisions.
Ma'am, let's go back to your presentation, because we are left with very little time, so we will have to wind up.
So hence it is very essential for us to adapt the textbook also, like it is essential. See, I think one of my question was to develop the inclusive strategies. So very important thing is we need to undertake the diagnostic instructions, means we assess the child, what exactly are the skills, what exactly need to be developed, that we need to take. Then based on that you develop your instructions. Once you deliver your instructions, you monitor the instructions. And also you see in an inclusive setup there are different learners. The visual learners you have, means they focus more on the print and all, you know, these type of things they will be learning it, whereas there are auditory learners where they just hear and they will learn it. There are children who have a keen sense of, you know, environment and the experience, they want experience, so they are the kinesthetic learners. So based on all these learners we need to differentiate the instructions, and we should provide. And as I explained earlier, of course it is very essential for us to provide an experiential base for your lesson, because on that base we can develop the instructions or the lessons properly. Questioning is very important, because many times the teachers are left with only the lower level questions, that we call it as the knowledge level questions, because they just ask you the factual questions. They never allow the child, for example, like a gifted child is coming in your class, we need to ask questions like application questions, probing questions, hypothetical questions, so that you pull out his potentialities. So that is very, very essential. Then of course we have cooperative, collaborative and this learning, where what do we do is basically we group children for their learning strategies. Then self monitoring is very essential for these children, and also we need to develop enthusiasm in these children so that they can learn very well in the inclusive practices. Or of course, as I said, the success of the classroom instructions lies in the curriculum, the method which you are following and the learners. And very important concept we need to remember is the multiple intelligence. We should remember that all these children have different type of intelligence. Some are of linguistic intelligence, some are of logical mathematical intelligence, some children are very good in thinking in terms of 3-dimensional, that we call it as a spatial intelligence. Some people are very good in musical, they listen to the environment, that is very essential. So all these multiple intelligence need to be tapped amongst the learners, in inclusive setup. Otherwise, if you look at only the language based intelligence, our children will fail, and we may label them as retarded or slow learner and academically poor, and all that will have a negative impact on the inclusive setup. Very important thing again in terms of evaluation and practices are like, we have conventional practices like we do oral test, multiple choice test, we do true or false test, matching test and all, but for all these tests may not be suitable. For example, an oral test may not be suitable to a child with hearing impairment. Hence it is very essential to have open book text test, where you give the book and ask the learner to answer the questions, or paired test, you group 2 children and give the question, they will solve it problem. Performance tests, don't ask them to write down, let them perform the activity and based on that you can assess it. Or you have a portfolios where what do is we collect the samples, evaluate and then grade on these children, which is very essential because all these children have differential abilities of expression. When I am going to talk about evaluation of personals, of course professionals who are involved in practices is also very essential because they are the one who is going to implement the inclusive practices. Hence it is essential to evaluate the teachers and the multi level workers through a performance appraisal, or you can have a confidential report, or you can have a learner rating scale where the children will rate the teacher and say whether she is practicing, or is she meeting the needs of these children. On as a system also requires evaluation, that is need to be done again through rating scales, or you can call an independent agency and ask them to evaluate the inclusive practices, and you can identify the strengths and weaknesses of the children. Now very important, and finally before we conclude, it is very essential to understand, because I think many of my viewers are doing the diploma level course, or many of them are going to be working in a special school or an inclusive setup. It is very essential to understand what are the roles of special school, or what partnership we need to build for promoting inclusive education in our country. What we can, or the role of the special schools will be to give early intervention services to all children with hearing impairment below 6 years, in collaboration with your ICDS and other local government agencies for preparing these children for inclusive education. We also have a greater role to play in terms of supportive services. What we can do is we can do curricular adaptations. The special schools may provide individualized instructions, they may provide remedial instructions, they can prepare these children for mastery level learning. Of course, language and communication skills may be developed through special school services. Educational assessment of these children studying in inclusive setup is one of the activity the special school can take up, and parent guidance and all very important. And what we can is we can strengthen the regular school teachers or the inclusive school teachers by providing orientation about disability and disability management. That is very important. So finally, if any one of us are looking forward to develop an inclusive school, and if we want to promote inclusive education, what do we require? We require, one is a shared vision. We all should think that, do we want to be a part of this inclusive society? Do we want to give equality, social justice to these children? We all should decide, and we want a committed team to practice inclusive strategies. We need to select a proper model for practice. Our admission policy need to be reviewed. what percentage of differently abled children can be included, and all those strategies, because many a times the schools take it just for the namesake. That should not be. We should have a school level curriculum where we should see whether the needs of all the learners are satisfied. We should also look in terms of independent curriculum where the individualized instructions can be developed. Teacher staff orientation training is very essential if you want to promote the inclusive education. And finally, our methodology, our teaching strategies need to be looked. Resource mobilization, because many a times I told you partnership ke liye we need to look at several resources, you know, providing appropriate service to these children, hence it is very essential. Assessment and evaluation is continual process. And finally, we need to reflect and review all our practices for promoting inclusive education. Let us wind up this presentation by looking at the slide. The problem is not how to wipe out the differences, but how to unite with the difference intact. This is Tagore's quote. With this quote, sir, I feel that it is our moral responsibility to promote inclusive education, and we have a great responsibility to share towards this, towards creating an inclusive society in our country.
मैडम सुनी मैथ्यूज, मैं आपका धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि आपने इतना अच्छा आज हमारे साथ चर्चा की इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन के ऊपर, इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन ऑफ चिल्ड्रन विथ हियरिंग इम्पेयरमेंट। ये काफ़ी एजुकेटिव और इन्फॉर्मेटिव आपका प्रेजेंटेशन था, और ये चर्चा आपके साथ बहुत ही, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हमारे दर्शकों के लिए, हमारे विद्यार्थियों के लिए काफ़ी लाभप्रद होगा। और आने वाले समय में हम आपसे और भी चीज़ें जानना और सीखना चाहेंगे। इसके साथ ही ये हमारा आज का सेशन ख़त्म होता है, और अगले सेशन जो हमारा होगा वो अगले सप्ताह में होगा, और तब तक हम आपसे इजाज़त चाहेंगे। मिसेस सुनी मैथ्यू, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद RCI के स्टूडियो में आने के लिए। थैंक यू वेरी मच।